Hi, I'm Ricky Arundel, the founder of the PSA, and this video is all about platform mechanics. I've been a speaker and a meeting planner for almost 40 years, and in that time, one of the most important lessons I've learned is that no matter how good your content and your speaking skills, poor platform mechanics can completely wreck your presentation. So, what do I mean by platform mechanics? Well, in simple terms, it's everything apart from the content and your presentation. So that's all of the things that are going on around you, the room, the stage, the AV, the sound, the lights, the video, the computers, the props, all of the technical stuff that might be connected with you getting up and delivering your presentation. But it's also about the people. So there's the team, the meeting planner, the facilitator or conference chair, the AV team, all the people that support making that a great presentation. And then there are a whole bunch of other little things that you need to think about, like your introduction, the timings, the room temperature, interferences, many of which are completely and totally out of your control. Here's the problem. I'm the speaker. I'm the one everyone's focusing on, and the show must go on. So what I want to do in this video is look at some tips and hints that you can take on board that will help you to be able to cope when things do go wrong, but more importantly, to prevent things from going wrong in the first place. Now, most important thing to remember is that you and your message must be the center of attention. That's what people have come for. They're coming to listen to you, to hear your message. And your goal is to make that happen. The stuff around you should support delivering that message and not be a distraction. If the audience can't hear you, can't see you properly, they're not going to listen and they won't remember. It's a waste of their time being there. So you've got to minimize the distractions and make everything start to work to help you. So let's see how we can do that. The first thing to remember is that whatever happens as a speaker, get there early. It's the number one rule to avoid any problems. If you arrive 10 minutes before you're due to speak and there's a problem, there is no time to fix it. The more complex the event, the earlier you need to get there. So I want to try and make sure I get there. I'm not the star, I'm part of the team, and I'm going to be one big part of the whole event that meeting plan does not have to stress about. And we can get going. Now, second part of the team is the facilitator or the conference chair. They're the person who's going to introduce you. Now, God, I have had some unbelievably bad introductions in the past. And the reason they were bad more often than not was because I didn't write the introduction. The last thing you want is the conference facilitator or the meeting planner scouring the internet looking for information about you to cobble together an introduction. The worst thing possible for me is for the introducer to tell the story I was going to open with or give away some information I wanted to leave to the end of my presentation. The introduction needs to be fairly simple, about 30 seconds. Keep it really short. 3 things you need to cover. Who are you? Why are you speaking? What is the audience going to get from, how are they going to benefit from listening to you? Just write a simple presentation, get that to the meeting planner well in advance, take a copy with you when you get to the event, meet the conference chair, meet the facilitator who's going to introduce you. Have they got a copy? If not, give them one. If they're insisting on doing their introduction, just check with them, find out what they're going to say. Try and get them to not say things if it's going to mess your presentation, or otherwise, at least you've got a bit of time to try and organize your presentation. So, third part then is the AV team. Now, these guys are professionals. They know their stuff, and you need to be able to work with them. The worst thing possible is to try and make demands. They've got enough going on to try and fix things. They will accommodate you if you can talk to them about what you want to try to do. I get to know their names. They're going to do a sound check, but I also want to check other things as well, and so do you. You need to make sure everything's going to work for you, see if there are any problems, and then talk to them about anything you might want to change. So let's have a look at a few of those areas that you would want to check out, because it's going to make you much more comfortable when you get up to speak. The first thing is microphones. Generally, as a speaker, we have to accept that we're going to use microphones. Unless you've had acting training and you can project your voice to an audience of 500 people and still be heard at the back of the room, use the microphone. If everything's set up for mics, you use it. Now, the first thing you're going to get when you arrive there, they're going to do an audio check. So they're going to plug up the microphone. This is a typical example. This is a lavalier style microphone. This is my own little backup one. You'll clip the microphone onto some part of your clothing. Now, a couple of things you need to watch here. In doing the sound check, watch for things like this. My jewellery can tap against that. Maybe a tie will grate against it. It's important to make sure the microphone is clear of any distractions. If necessary, take the jewellery off. Now, the other thing you've got to think about is where you're going to clip this. Inside pocket, back of trousers. For women, it's a little bit more of a problem. What if you're wearing a dress? Loose-fitting trousers. These are quite heavy. They can start to drag clothes off you if you're not careful. So think about what you're going to wear. When you're thinking about what you're going to wear, think about how you're going to handle this microphone. Clip it onto the bra strap, wear a belt extra to go with it. Whatever you need to do, just bear in mind you're going to probably have to have something like this fixed onto you. Now, not all organisations now use these clip-on lavalier mics. Quite a few times now in the last few years, I've noticed I've been getting the headset microphones kind of thing. I think Madonna first started using one of these. They clip right beside your face, but they clip over your head. That might sound easy, but if you've just spent half an hour making sure your hair looks great for doing this event, and you then arrive and start mucking it all up with a headset, it's going to mess your hairstyle up. So you're going to have time to put the headset on, make sure it's all fitted, get back into the toilets, then redo your hair and fix it so that you look good. Just be prepared if that's going to be happening. The other thing I had was I arrived at one event and said, have you got a radio mic? Yeah, and they handed it to me. Now, if you've not used a radio mic before or a handheld microphone before when you're doing a presentation, it can be a bit difficult. The problem is if you're used to making big gestures, can't do that. You've got to try to remember to keep this microphone always in the right place. And that's all very good until you start to try and handle your PowerPoint presentations. Now you've got one hand with the microphone, one hand with the remote control, and all of a sudden you're getting into a whole clumsy thing trying to handle both. Think about it in advance. How would you handle it if that's going to happen? That's the most important thing, is knowing how will you cope with this. So, final thing, when you're moving around, and I do move around a lot. I'm a sort of bit of a mobile speaker. Probably seen that even doing this presentation. If you get a microphone too close to the speakers, it can cause awful feedback sound. So you need to do a bit of a check. Walk around, find out from the AV people if it's a big event. Yeah, where are the no-go areas? Where are the places you need to avoid if you're going to move around the audience, where you're going to get feedback which will deafen everybody. So, now we're on to stage and lighting. You've got the microphone sorted out. We need to check this out. I've been on some very different stages. Sometimes you arrive there and you find the stage is like 6 foot above the audience. How are you going to get onto that one? There's steps going up. If I'm wearing high heels, or if you're older and a little bit less flexible and mobile, is access easy? So look at how you get on, how you get off, and then walk around that stage. Do you know there is nothing worse than a squeaky stage? So just check that out. If you've seen any of the TEDx conferences, you'll know, or TED conferences, you'll notice this big red carpet that everybody stands on. Well, that's not just part of the branding. It's not, set design. It's there specifically to designate the areas that the speaker has to stay within in order to be properly lit. TED conferences are all videoed, and those videos are going to go up online. Now, a lot of the conferences that you speak at and meetings you speak at won't be videoed, but the big events, you will be videoed. And you'll be videoed because they're going to need to project your image back up onto the big screens behind you. If you move out of the lit areas, you just go dark. People can't see you. So you have to stay within those lit areas. So if you are used to going off stage, or you've got things you want to do where you're going to engage with the audience, you need to check how you can do that, talk to the AV team to find out where you can move. Think about your clothing as well if it's going to be videoed. Some clothing doesn't really work. Always worth taking a couple of spare outfits just in case what you're wearing clashes with the backdrop for the set, or just doesn't work well. Stripes don't work very well, bright colours, like glittery stuff. There are some things which just don't work so well on stage, so you might need some flexibility. I've been to a few events where there has been an assumption that all of the speakers will stand at a lectern. This is especially true when you get big formal events. Most politicians and industry speakers tend to just go and stand at a lectern and deliver their speech. As professional speakers, we tend to like to move around a bit. But if the set has been designed on the assumption that people won't move, then the lighting won't work. So you need to find out, is there any adaptation for that? If you do move around a lot, always a good idea to let the meeting planner know well in advance what you want to do so that they can then build that into their set design, or can come back to you and say, look, that's not going to be possible with the way we're doing things. Keep things informed well in advance, get there early, really important all the time. Walk the stage. I like to sit around the room, check things out, see the other speakers doing their sound checks, just to see what are things looking like from the perspective of the audience in different places. Finally, worst thing that ever happened to me, I got up onto the stage, looked out, and nothing. The lights above me were so bright, and the audience lights, the auditorium lights, so low, all I could see was this blackness. I could hear people, but I couldn't see anything. And it's very distracting. If you're going to do a 45-minute keynote and you can't see anyone, you can't engage with anybody visually, that's really disconcerting. So make sure when you do your check that you actually see what the light levels are going to be like. And if possible, arrange to have those lights a little bit better for you. So, slides. Yeah, talking about PowerPoint is probably an entire video all by itself. So here I just want to look at a couple of very brief things about the platform mechanics side of it. Things can always go wrong with slides, and you need to be prepared for that. Check your slides when you get to an event and go right the way through them and check them and make sure that everything is okay. Never ever assume that it's going to work. For example, what can go wrong? Well, your laptop might not talk to their projector. I'm still having that problem even now. You've got the problem with memory sticks. I take my presentation on a memory stick so we can put it onto the meeting planner's computer. Some companies will not let a memory stick be plugged into their computer if it's not fully and totally virus checked because of the risk of viruses. So that's a problem. So you might email the presentation to them. Well, if you do, the risk of corruption is very high indeed. So you need to make sure that you're covered for that. Now, what other things can go wrong? Now, when you get to a presentation, if you're going to use your own laptop, you will generally find that you're going to plug into one of these. It's a VGA cable, sometimes using HDMI. I use a Mac. Some of the newer laptops I've noticed are coming without the VGA plug, so you need to make sure you've got an adapter because the client will be assuming you can just plug into this. If you can't, you're then going to have to go to their laptop, which is where you have the problem with the memory stick, or you email it to them. And if they load it onto their computer and they're not using the same version of PowerPoint as you, I always use the most up-to-date, but often I've come across clients using 10-year-old versions. And all of a sudden the formatting and the slide transitions and animations that I'm using just don't work. Sometimes they haven't got the same font that I've got, so all the fonts get changed into ones that no longer work. So check through every single slide and make sure that they all work, especially if the client has decided to add your slides into their program or they've decided to use their template, which can completely wreck your PowerPoint presentation. Need plenty of time for this. I've often had to literally sit down and virtually redo all the slide transitions for an hour before a presentation starts. And then finally what is it about hotels that produce lighting in the ceiling which immediately washes out the screen behind you? I've had some terrible experiences with that. I was doing a speech in a large chapel, and all of a sudden, halfway through my presentation, the sun came out through a window I hadn't noticed right up high, and the sunlight just shone straight onto the screen, washed it out. The rest of my presentation I had to do without any slides because there was no way to overcome this. There were no blinds. So all of these are things you need to be prepared for. And at the end of the day, I've always said you have to be ready to deliver your presentation without PowerPoint. You're there, you've been hired to be a speaker, you're expected to speak. You can't just say, if I haven't got my PowerPoint, I can't do it. You're being paid to deliver. Room layout, another big issue. If it's a small event, you're the main presenter, you may have some opportunities to be able to influence exactly how the room is laid out. But what I've found is more often than not, you don't have that. And even if you have influenced it, when you get there, they've set it up according to some standard hotel format. Most events tend to use theatre layout or cabaret. Cabaret is what I prefer. I try to get people to do that. That works for me with the kind of style of my presentation. Sometimes just simply the size of the room and the number of the audience. Theatre's the only way. That's the style to pack them in. Sometimes we have all sorts of rooms, very long rooms, very, very wide rooms, all sorts of challenges that you come just with the room layout. And I've had some of the most amazing layouts. Sometimes you'll get boardroom, everybody packed into a boardroom, horseshoe style, classroom style. I've spoken at some universities where you have these raked theatre where you're almost looking up at the back to the audience. And some of the most unusual events. I've spoken on a large stage outdoors in the middle of a field at a Pride event. I've spoken on a stage in a 3-tier shopping centre with the audience around on the balconies looking down on me. On a large chapel, in a great big sports hall with the acoustics where my voice just echoed and echoed around. Spoken in the bar on a cruise ship with everybody still in the bar getting drunk. And probably the most challenging actually was in the round with the audience all the way around me, 360 degrees with 2 or 3 rows of people all round. All of these different room layouts pose different challenges. You need to know in advance, if possible, what the layout's going to be. Influence it if you can, but if not, you need to learn to be able to adapt to whatever the room layout is in order to deliver the best presentation so the audience doesn't really notice it. Finally, timing. It's a given. You got to keep to time. But sadly, even that's not enough sometimes. The audience is always clock watching. They're always waiting for the coffee break, for lunch break. And if they're expecting to be at coffee, lunch, or in the bar, or leaving to go home, and you're still speaking, they won't be listening. Some of them will be leaving. You'll get distractions as the people are trying to get out because they've got to go and pick up kids. They've got to go and try and beat the traffic. If the whole meeting starts to run late, my advice is talk to the meeting planner before you go on. What do they want you to do? If you're scheduled to speak for 45 minutes, you might have to cut that down to 30 minutes to avoid the problems that are going to be happening. Perhaps the meeting planner wants you to do your full bit. Well, if so, best thing is for them to get up and explain to the audience that you're late. This will now run for an extra 15 minutes. Some people will leave as a result. But you won't give any thanks for insisting on your full time because everything's running late. Be flexible, be prepared to cut your speech and try to finish on time if you can, even if you've said that you're going to run your full time. So, just to bring that to the end, it's you and your message that are the centre of attention. That's what you've got to try to achieve. Poor sound, creaky stage, room too hot, running late, all of those things are distractions. And you have to manage those distractions so that they have the least possible impact on your presentation. As far as possible, you want the audience to not notice the platform mechanics so that they can focus on your presentation. If they can't see or hear you, they won't be listening and they won't remember. But what you've got to do is to make sure that platform mechanics supports your presentation. and turns it from a good presentation into a great one.